p.m. So I think I'll get started with the session because we have a packed session today. My name is Vivian Tran, and I'm Admissions and Recruitment Manager at the UBC Sauder School of Business. Just a few notes about this session. It is being recorded, so if you prefer not to show up in the recording, just feel free to keep your video off the entire time. Before I start the session, I would like to acknowledge that UBC's Vancouver Point Grey campus is situated on the traditional, ancestral, and ceded territory of the Musqueam people. We would also like to acknowledge that you're joining us today from many places, near and far, and acknowledge the traditional owners and caretakers of those lands. In the room today, in terms of staff, you have myself, Manager Vivian, Manager of Recruitment and Admissions. We have Pam Nanson, the Associate Director of Specialty Master's Careers. We have Anina Noble, who is a Marketing and Communications co-op student. And we also have Jade. She was able to join us last minute. So Jade is our Associate Recruiter. So our team and myself will be in the background answering questions that you have as the session's going through. And a reminder to please put your questions in the Q&A unless it's a technical question related to the webinar issues. So the agenda for today, we're going to start with a quick MBAN program overview, and then we'll be on to Pam's Career Outcomes presentation, and then we'll have a Q&A period as well. So the UBC MBAN program is, of course, at the UBC Sauder School of Business, located in Vancouver, Canada. So there's actually a beautiful picture of Vancouver in my background here, that this is actually UBC campus. So it is a lovely place to study, but it is also the #1 business school in Canada. And the institution, UBC, is one of the top 40 institutions in the world. So it is a globally renowned institution that you will be attending, a center of thought leadership in the world. We do have 43,000 Sauder alumni in various countries around the world. And in terms of UBC alumni, that's even greater. It's, I believe, 140 or 300,000 alumni in 140 countries around the world. So it is a really incredible global community that you're going to be joining if you join UBC Sauder. A little bit about Vancouver. It is ranked one of the most livable cities in the world. You can see this beautiful aerial shot of the city. It gets me every time to see it because I'd be up skiing and you're 30 minutes away and you'll just see oceans and mountains. And it is an incredibly stunning place to live, work, and play. So it is one of the fastest growing metropolitan economies in Canada. And it's home to a variety of different industries and companies that were born right in Vancouver, like Lululemon, or global multinationals like Amazon, and also companies like McKinsey and Microsoft, and also government opportunities working in the Provincial Healthcare Authority or with the City of Vancouver, for example. The program journey for the MBAN program, it's an intensive 12-month program, and you can see the first 8 months, you're kind of an intensive academic training and program training, basically always doing essentially 4 classes within a 5-week period. Alumni mentioned to me, it's like this intensive program where you kind of marry and divorce 4 programs every 5 weeks. So it does cycle through quite quickly, and it is very intensive. And you can see career development programming is front and center from the very beginning of the program until you reach the 4-month paid consulting internship, which Pam is going to go into in more detail with some really exciting data later on. So I'm not going to talk too much about that. You will have access to the Hari Varshney Business Career Center from day 1 of the program, and it just has unprecedented and one-to-one type support from day 1 of the program. So you'll see the results of that when Pam gets to her presentation, but it is very personalized and a lot of support that you get while you're going through this rigorous academic program. There's a whole professional development side that you're going to be engaging with. Admission requirements for the MBAN program. We're looking for ideally a B+ or higher for your cumulative GPA, particularly on those quantitative courses. So that on different scales will work out to about a 76% on a 100% scale or a 3.3 GPA. There's different types of grading systems, as I know you guys are probably having questions about. I can send you more information about that. If you guys have more questions, just pop it into the Q&A and I'll send you a link that you can actually search up your own country to see where your GPA falls within your country standards. The GMAT or GRE, we're looking ideally for a 650 or higher on the GMAT or 330 or higher on the GRE. Ideally, the 50th percentile in both the verbal and the quantitative section, especially the quantitative section in both of those tests. For the GMAT, I will say that we are just looking for the verbal and quants. We don't look at the integrated reasoning or the written assessment, although occasionally we will open that written assessment if you have grammatical errors in your writing samples. So please just avoid that by making sure you proofread your compositions. There's no work experience requirement for this program, but we are looking for candidates that are highly self-aware and know what they want to get out of the program. They understand their program, they understand what they want to develop career-wise, and they have a plan. So if you are a younger candidate or you don't have work experience, you are eligible for the program, but we are looking for a high level of self-awareness and goal setting in terms of what you want to get career-wise out of the program. Now, on the flip side, you can also have many years of work experience, but you have to be able to tell the story of how this program fits into your professional story, right? So generally speaking, our grads or our students are somewhere between those two extremes, right? Like no work experience and like 15, 20 years of work experience. People generally fall in the happy medium. But if you are on those two ends, then we want to see like, how does this program fit into your career journey? And it could be a story at the beginning of your journey, or it could be the story when you're quite seasoned in your career. But so long, this program can be suitable for you so long as you can tell us the story of how this fits into who you are and where you are in your career. So minimum of 2 professional references. Now, if you are someone without any work experience, these can be references from professors. But if you are in the workforce for any amount of time, we would hope for 1 reference, ideally from someone that you reported to directly, and then another one can be someone that knows you well in professional context. There's a variety of written and video essays, so they're not very long, so do be concise. And of course, watch out for those grammatical and spelling errors. Those don't need to be in there. Just a short little proofread will usually take care of those problems. And then English proficiency test is only required if you did not do a degree in English. So if the medium of instruction was English at any institution that you went for a degree program, like whether it was a bachelor's degree or a master's degree, if the medium of instruction was English, then the English test requirement will be waived. So if you do need to write the English test, we're looking for a 7 on the IELTS academic. So that's the average of 7. Or 100 on the TOEFL. So that's what I would say about the English proficiency tests. And then the personal interview is the last stage of the process. So that's really for us to kind of fill in any gaps that we see in your application. Like if there was a gap in your resume that wasn't explained in the application process, we might ask you then. If there was certain courses that you failed, maybe we might have seen that and might ask you what happened there. So it's really just to fill in the gaps of things that we don't understand yet from reading the rest of your application, and really to get to know you better. And again, to assure that this program is right for your needs and that you will be successful from doing the program. That's what we're all looking for. That's what you're looking for. And that's also what we're looking for. So it's not to trip you up or anything. The personal interview is just this process to get to know you a bit better. There is a GMAT GRE waiver process. So if you are from a highly quantitative background, there is a possibility that the GMAT or GRE could be waived in your case. So we can add a link to show you like this whole process where it is on our website. But essentially, like if you come from a highly quantitative background, you can write a statement of qualification and like select that you'd like to be considered for a waiver. And essentially you'd have to have a certain number of quantitative courses, of course, above a certain average. So at least a B+ average for your cumulative GPA, as well as of course for all those quants courses. Now, the deadline for fall 2023 for international students for GMAT waiver consideration has already passed. But if you're a domestic student, you still have until the end of March, so March 28th, to submit a fully complete application along with the request for a GMAT GRE waiver assessment if you submit before March 28th, 2023. So that's still available for domestic student. And of course, if you're international students, it is passed now, so you would have to write the test, but it is still available if you are applying for a later entry, for example, fall 2024. scholarships and awards. So we do have a range of these types of scholarships. We do allocate them throughout the course of the cycle. And so they are all based on merit and fit for the program. And they range anywhere from 5 to 15,000. So like if you do get an offer of admission from us, you would also know whether you are a scholarship recipient. So you would see the full financial picture at the very beginning. Dates and deadlines, as you can see, our third round deadline for domestic student is March 14th, 2023. That is also the final round deadline for international students. So international students, if you're thinking of applying for fall 2023, you do need to submit your fully complete application by March 14th, 2023. So that's your deadline. And then for domestic students, you do have another round until April 25th, 2023 to submit your application for fall 2023 entry. Join us at our next event. Jade or Nina, if you can just put this event into the chat. It's a panel event with some of our alumni and also one of our professors from the MBAN program, just talking about how to upskill your career with analytics. So if you're still in the kind of decision point right now of considering to do an analytics degree, come meet with these professionals that are both drawn from our MBAN program as well as from their faculty to learn more about like how you can upskill your career with this degree program and with analytics in general. So that's a panel discussion, virtual panel discussion, and you can bring your questions to the panelists. So I will save the question period for later, but now I would love to invite Pam to start her presentation on MBAN Career Outcomes, and I will just be on the background answering your questions. So any questions about what I talked about, please feel free to pop it into the Q&A.
Thanks, Vivian. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. As I get my presentation set up, I would love to hear from where you're joining us from today. So why don't you just pop that into the chat box? It's always fun for me to hear who's who and where they're joining us from. So yeah, if you don't mind typing that up for me, it'd be great. Can everybody see my internship data there? Perfect. Okay, so I'm hoping this will go smoothly and I won't have any bumps on the presentation. But I think it's really important to start, before we talk about the career outcomes, one of the things that Vivian touched upon was the fact that we actually do have a mandatory sort of internship part of your program. It's the experiential learning part of your program. Now, you have two ways that you can do this, and I'll talk about this a little bit later on. But one of the most important things is that for many of you who are coming here as international applicants, getting that Canadian work experience is very, very important. And that's the reason that we have the internship as part of your program, so that you can get that experience and you can learn from working within a Canadian company. You know, there would be slightly cultural differences, but also for many of you, if you are pivoting your career, this could be a great opportunity for you to learn and apply all the skills that you learned in the program to your work experience here in Canada. So I wanted to share some of the data from last year's class, and I thought it'd be important to start with, we had 65 students in last year's class. 57 of them picked and chose a traditional internship. And what I mean by that is you do have an opportunity to do a personal research project instead of an internship. Now, the thing about the research project is that you have to come up with a question that you want to solve, or an app or something like that. And so you are the person designing, creating that whole question and leading the charge on that. And you have a faculty supervisor that will help you along the way to make sure you're on the right trajectory. Many of our students, as you can see, chose a traditional internship. So all 57 who wanted an internship landed an internship, and they worked within a company where the role has to be analytics focused. Now, quite often you have to remember that the neat thing about your program is that you're in a grad school program. So your undergrad also plays a part in where you may end up. So employers are attracted to maybe where did you do your undergrad? Was it in oil and gas where you're an engineer? And that is an attraction to them, as well as the analytics piece of what you are learning in the program. So I thought it'd be also very interesting. Vivian mentioned earlier that, you know, we do have the Business Career Center. That's my team of career managers that help you in one-to-one coaching. We also have a class, a career development class called BA 520. And just so you get some context in what separates perhaps UBC from many other universities, most of the universities do not have a career development class. You are expected to go and learn all the material, find jobs, all this kind of stuff in your own time. They may give you time 2 hours a week where there's no programming in place. We want everybody to have this same access to all the information that they can get. So we have 10 classes over the year, and you also have something called BA 509, which is internship prep classes. In these classes, we bring in employers to come and chat to you. We bring in guest speakers who will teach you about salary negotiation. We do mock interviews. So there's a number of things that we do that is part of your curriculum, so you don't have to find that extra time to learn this material. Everybody is from the same starting point. You will see from the internship application process that we have a tool called COOL, Careers Online, and that's our BCC job board, or Business Career Center job board. So you'll see 73% of internships last year were found through this job board, that our employer relation team goes out and has all their opportunities and their connections, and they come back and bring jobs and post these on this job board. So 73% of our students found their jobs on this. 12% found them on LinkedIn or different webinars or different job boards here, and 15% were other. And when we talk about other, we're talking about, we have a great faculty at Sauder, and sometimes they have connections with people that they've done research with. They have alumni referrals. Vivian talked about the alumni earlier. That is going to be a huge part of your connection and a huge part of who will be referring internships for this year. So you get leads from classmates and leads from previous employers that our business development team work with. So I wanted to share again, like, what our team does for you. You'll see the number of opportunities that were posted for internships. We're still talking about internships here. We're in technology and consulting. That's where the majority of the internships were posted. Healthcare posted a number of them, accounting, we go all the way down to pharma and biotech, which it says there's, maybe 1 or 2 opportunities that were posted with us, but other opportunities that people found in pharma and biotech, they may have been different, but these were the only ones that were posted on COOL. You'll see an average retail, transportation, consumer products, natural resources. They're kind of in the middle of the field. So you'll see the top ones are technology, consulting, healthcare, accounting, finance, and of course, government. Now, what's really important to understand is when our employer relation team goes out there and tells these wonderful employers about our students, and when they go out, they're not just going to Vancouver, they're going to Toronto, they're going to Calgary, they're going to different cities. When they bring back the postings and we put them on, we've done the math, and we figured out last year and the year before that on average, for every 1 student we have in the program, we need to put at least 4.1 postings in there for you to be able to land in those roles. So that's the data and the math that we did. So, they will be looking for many, many postings for you. You can see the number up on the screen. And that is their part of the process. But I will say, and I need to make this very clear, that is their part of the process, but we don't place you. You have to land in these internships yourself. You have to go out there, you have to interview, you have to have a great resume, a great cover letter. And that's what my team is there to help support you with. But you have to go and win that job. We do not place you in these jobs, but we will provide you with all the support that you need in order to be able to land those positions. I wanted to share a snippet of where our internships, our interns landed last year, and the kinds of job titles that they received. So you'll see, I talked about, consulting and everything for our internships last year. You'll see that we have, we do have our internships there, but we also have Port of Vancouver. We have health authorities in there, which Vivian talked about. We have RBC Personal Banking. That's a national-wide company. Loblaws is one of our biggest sort of CPG consumer products. It's one of our biggest grocery stores. But you'll see Spotify and Boston Consulting Group, right? So we've got big names, but also something to understand about the Vancouver job market is that we have a lot of small to medium enterprises here. So you're going to see a lot of local companies. And our local companies don't actually start posting their jobs until about February, March, and April time. Usually around March is when we see the peak of the postings come in. And that is because they're usually waiting on their budgets for the next year, or they tend to be more what we call just-in-time market. So they know that your internship is starting in May, so they won't be looking till about March time. And that's when we see a big burst in the postings happening. I thought you might be interested in learning a little bit about the data. So we we figured out how much time you need to spend on applications, how many hours you need to put in on top of your academics to make sure that you're giving enough time to the application process. So I'm just going to let you look at that for a minute while I take a sip of water, if that's okay, so I don't have a big coughing spree. So you'll see that it took an average, how many hours did you work on in order to secure your internship? It was about 23 hours people put in to make sure that they got an internship. So it's not an easy feat. They had to do a number of interviews before, so if they had to do up to 3 interviews before they landed, or up to 5, you'll see 24 people. That was the biggest bulk of the numbers, that maybe they had to go through 5 interviews to be able to get to land their offer. I thought you may be interested in learning where some of the internships happened. So the majority of our internships were in BC. We had some in Alberta. We have some in the East Coast. We have people going to Toronto. We have a lot of alumni there, one in Quebec. But the majority of our students want to stay in BC. Perhaps that's something to do with our BC PNP, and I will not talk about that. That's the postgraduate work permit process and the express entry, but that is not my wheelhouse. But I know that's why a number of students decide to stay in BC. But yeah, the opportunities come from all across Canada. Something that's important to understand is the median salary, and I want to be careful about what I'm saying, for the internship process. So Vivian said these are paid internships. They have to be paid, like legally in Canada, you have to be paid. So the median salary that our students got was about $4,300. Some got more, some got slightly less, but that was the median point in which what we're telling employers what we recommend that they pay our students for those internships. Now, something that's really important for you to understand that's happening next year is that, you need to do a minimum of an 8-week, but you can do longer than that, right? So some of our employers like 12 to 16 weeks, because that's when you can really get into the data, the nitty gritty, and come up with answers. But we're only asking for a minimum of 8 weeks next year. But something, like I mentioned, is some employers like longer, and also a lot of the students, they want to be there at the companies longer, because that gives them a higher chance of showcasing their capabilities, and also increasing their chances of a conversion from an internship into a full-time opportunity. That is the salary range, like I was talking about. That was a median, and then I said, the range was, it went up as far high as $5,833 for the internship payment. So I'm sure we're really interested in knowing the career outcomes as a full-time data, because that's why you signed up for this course today, this presentation today. Our full-time hires, I'm going to share some of the companies' names where they got hired. But some of the big companies that might be of importance to you were Vancity, which is one of our local banks or credit unions here, Fraser Health, which is one of our local health authorities, Spotify, Canada Drives is a local company, and they're actually national across Canada. They hired about 5 or 6 of our students last year for internships and then converted. Boston Consulting Group, and then WestJet. WestJet is one of those companies that they do a longer internship period. So if you land with them, you're not doing an 8-week period. 8 weeks is your minimum that you have to do, but you can stay at the company for as long as you want. And so some of our students ended up doing a 16-month internship with them, which is totally allowed, but they only had to cover the first 12 weeks as part of their internship mandatory portion, where you do a project at the end of it, do a write-up on it. So I thought you might want to hear about some of the companies that they landed. Other companies were EY. I talked a lot about the fact that consulting companies were big hirers of our students. City of Vancouver, Lululemon, where it all started, Aritzia. These are the kind of companies that are hiring locally and hired for full-time jobs. So I wanted to share that the salary of our students, so out of a class of 65 students, 51 have landed already. And out of those 51, $82,000 has been the median base salary. Now, some are higher, some are lower, but $82,000 is the median for this last year's class, right? So this is literally the data that I pulled off a few days ago. This is the class that graduated in November this past year, so 4 months ago. Some of the titles that they have been landed in or have been picked for are financial analysts, product managers, business optimization analyst, data analysts and look at the companies that they've been hired by. Lulu hired at least 2 or 3 people, WestJet, Interfor, Providence Healthcare, City of Vancouver, EY Consulting. I just picked a handful of for you, but you'll notice there's a lot of senior consultants. You won't notice a lot of data scientists. This degree is not really designed for data scientists because the depth that we go into is more analytical. You're telling a story between maybe data scientists and data engineers and the C-suite people. The ones that land in data scientist roles are typically people with computer science backgrounds because they can talk to both ends of the spectrum. So I think that's really important to highlight for you. So you'll see there's been a lot of analytics or decision support roles. The cities in which our students landed full-time roles in were Toronto, Vancouver with 70% of the hires. So out of those 51 students, 70% stayed in Toronto, 6% in Calgary. I showed you on the screen. And when I say Burnaby is just outside Vancouver. It's about 10 kilometers down the road. It's not very far, maybe 20. So it's not a whole new city. And North Vancouver, that was that beautiful picture that Vivian showed you at the beginning, where you cross the bridge and you see the mountains. That's North Vancouver. But we did have some students that went internationally. Somebody went back to Bolivia. Somebody got a role in Germany. But the majority of our students stay in Canada. Some go to Toronto because that is where all the big head offices are. That's where, if you want to work for the very big companies like Coca-Cola or Loblaws or, all our big banking offices, that's where they are based. So I just wanted to show by function. Not sure if you're interested in this, where our students landed. And it's important, I think, for you to understand the difference between our students landing by function and our students landing by industry. Our student could do a human resources role, but in the industry of accounting, right? They could be a human resources role in the industry of consumer packaged goods. So you'll see that 36%, obviously, because it's data analytics, they stayed in a data analytics sort of department in IT. Some went to marketing and sales. General management is what they just picked out because they might have been moving across different areas, or that's the only category that they could find. And I didn't get much more information from other, but the general management is where we talked about consulting. That may be important to you. But by industry, which is what I was talking about, you'll see where they landed in the different industries: financial services industry, healthcare, pharmacy, and biotech. So, while we may not have got those roles on call at the beginning where you saw, the internships, their full-time jobs showed that this is where they landed. Technology is where they landed, consumer products, goods, and of course, consulting. I'm leaving it up for a minute for you just to have a quick look at. And obviously, this is a recording, so you can access this information, later on. So I think that's it. The one thing that I wanted to share that I didn't put into a slide, and I think it's really important to understand, is I was very interested in learning the conversion of the internships from how many people who got an internship and then converted it into a full-time role. So out of those 51 students that I talked about, who got full-time jobs, 25 of those, so that's a 50% conversion rate, converted their internship into a full-time offer. So that is the power of internships, and that is the power of the workplace. Now, for some of them, they didn't want to stay at that company, or they knew they wanted to go somewhere else. And like in this year's case, what I'm seeing, some people have landed full-time offers too. So they're doing their internship, but they're going to a different company for a full-time offer because the hiring, say, of the Big Four consulting is at different times. So some have already got their full-time offer before they've got their internship. That doesn't usually happen that way, but it does because of the big national hiring cycles happen occasionally. So I guess it's time for Q&A time, Vivian, and I'm sure that they have questions for you and questions for me, and I'll do my best to answer their questions.
Yeah, thank you again, Pam, for for showing us that incredible data. And again, always thank you for the work that you do with our MBAN students. I'm always blown away by the results. Great. So participants, if you have any questions, this is a really great opportunity for you to pose your questions in the Q&A. It could be anything. It could be related to some of the data that you saw in Pam's presentation. If you want to know more, please feel free to pop those questions into the Q&A, and we'll pose them to Pam. Or if you had any questions for myself and the admissions and recruitment team, you can feel free to put that into the Q&A as well. So I see some questions starting to pop in. Okay, great. So one question is for Pam. What are the chances for getting in big companies in data analytics? I assume from doing the MBAN program.
So yeah, we do have people going into big companies, and I will be honest with you, and I'll say that that is usually for the people that have more work experience, or that they have a computer science background. It depends which big company we're talking about. So your undergrad does matter, and your work experience matters very much. It's the whole package. So when we talk about big companies, if you're talking about Deloitte and the Big Four, yes, definitely. Like, we get a lot of those, right? As I was saying, those are big companies. If you're talking about the Microsoft or Googles or the Amazons, you know, I'm going to be honest with you, you're going to get about 3 or 4 people in the class might get those opportunities. Why? Maybe it was a package that they had. Maybe it's a work experience. Maybe it's their undergrad. How they performed in the interview. It could be a number of different things. But if you're looking for those big, you know, FANG, you know, Facebook, all those kind of companies, those don't happen immediately. But what I have noticed is that they do happen. And most of our students, like, I'm looking at the data from 3 to 5 years, because that's how long this program has been in place for. They get their Canadian work experience, and they do end up at Google or, you know, or wherever they want to go 3 years later. They just have to be patient and get that Canadian work experience.
Great. Thanks, Pam. There's another question that's come up. Thanks for your wonderful presentation. And this person is wondering what the compensation range for full-time roles in technology and IT industry. How does the HBV Center or the Career Center assist on landing compensation on the higher end of the spectrum?
That's a great question. Okay, so so we do this class called salary negotiation class, which we teach you how to negotiate your salary. So it's not always just about your salary, it's the whole package, right? So when you're looking at it, you're looking at your benefits, you're looking at your holidays, you're looking at other healthcare, you're looking at pensions, you're looking at the whole package, and we teach you how to do that. But if you're looking at salary in terms of technology, we have something called SEAT, which is the Sauder Employment Analytics Tool. And that is a research tool. So all this data that I shared with you today is all data that came from our Sauder students, and they put it in. Now, I didn't share particular salaries with you because that is confidential data. I can share average salaries with you. And so what's an average salary is when somebody inputs their data from a job that they landed. Once we have 4 data points for that company in a particular role, we will take the average of those 4 salaries. And that is the data we can share with you. So if you're trying to negotiate a salary for tech, we can say to you, hey, look, the last sort of person that went in here got 150,000. So you want to be looking around that mark, right? But let's be honest, tech tends to pay higher. But big tech is also in decline right now, right? So let's be, you know, Shopify and other places have been closing things down. So you want to be in the range that, you know, you've done your research on Glassdoor pay scale, but through us. But you also are looking at how many years of experience do you have? What are you bringing to the table? And one thing I want to share with you, if you're coming in with 15 years worth of experience and you're going to lead with your MBA, because we do have students with our MBA, you have to remember that's not what you need to lead with. You're doing a new degree in analytics. And so you want to share what value you're bringing in the analytics. And sometimes you have to take a career dip, but only in salary for a little bit, because what we notice is that dip is just very short before you've proven your worth and you get the salary that you truly deserve. So it's about getting that Canadian work experience under your belt. So it's a hard question for me to answer in like, this is what you're getting for tech. It's more of a, you know, what are you bringing in terms of the whole package? And once you're in the program, you have that tool at your fingertips to research that. So we will, you know, help you negotiate that. I hope that answers the question.
Great. And if it doesn't, feel free to ask a follow-up question.
Yeah.
So we do have like a range of different questions coming up right now. So this person is asking, of the 51 of 65 students that got an internship, how many of these 65 got a full-time offer? I think you went over a little bit about that in your presentation about some students are just not looking at the time, but feel free to clarify a little bit on that.
Yeah, so there were 65 students, and I think I said at the beginning, there was 57 who took an internship. And so if you're looking at that now, out of the people that reported, 51 have reported that they have jobs. So the others are A, either still looking, or B, they've gone on holiday, or C, they've gone off my map. They're not reporting in seat. And I will track you down. I'll find you on LinkedIn, and we hit the phones and we do look you up. But we're asking you to self-report. And then out of those, I mentioned earlier that, out of those people that reported internships, we had 25 people who converted their internship, which is huge for us. So those people decided to stay on in those roles. So that was a great turnout.
Mm-hmm. And sometimes people, I think, like they do an internship and like they actually want to try something else afterwards as well. So it's not
very
always
true.
like,
some people didn't want to stay where they were. They got that for the internship. They landed their internship before the full-time role. So I love this question. Thank you, Kuhu. When is a good time to start applying for internships? Love this question. And I will say, I'm going to be super honest. The moment you either get accepted in the program is when you need to be getting a hold of the BCC or coming to these workshops that we put on. So once you're accepted into the program, you'll hear from the team to say, we're putting on workshops. I know that I'm putting one on in May for consulting. We know that BCG, McKinsey, Baines have upped their hiring timeline. So what that means is they're going to be starting their national recruitment starting June. You don't start your program until September, right? And the Big Four will be following soon after that, right? So we need people to start activating as soon as they get accepted, coming to us, learning to see what's out there, right? Polishing up their resumes and cover letters. So all this kind of information will be put on that website on how to do that. And our team is ready and willing to engage with you to help you to do that. So yeah, you have to make time for this. This is not something that you go, I know the academics are heavy, and I'm not going to lie to you, they are super heavy. But even if you say, I'm going to put 2 hours a week, and don't forget, we have our BA 520 and our BA 509 classes. I'm trying to condense my answers, but something to understand, as soon as you come in August and your classes start in September, we have something called CISs, company information sessions. All the companies are doing campus recruitment. They're all coming on. So this employer relations team, you need to make time, and you need to get to those company information sessions, because that's when you get ahead of these people and get to start making those connections and having coffee chats with alumni.
Mm-hmm. Great. I'm just going to give Pam a little water break right now. I'll answer a few questions that I can answer. So someone's asked the question, since the program is 1 year in length, will I be eligible for a 1 year or 3 year post-graduation work permit? So this is a good opportunity to just mention that in Canada, if you are an international student, for example, and you do a program of 8 months or longer, you have automatic eligibility for something called a post-graduation work permit. So this is an open work permit. And unlike in the United States, you don't require a sponsorship or a job in hand to have this work permit. You have automatic eligibility. You still need to apply for it. But for this work permit, by how it's written in law, is it's the length of the program that you do. So a 12-month program should equate like a 12-month post-graduation work permit, but occasionally people get longer. Sometimes they get like up to 3 years. We don't know, we can't guarantee the length of work permit that you get. So some people are quite concerned, like, oh, what if I don't get the 3-year work permit, or what if I only get 1 year? I would say don't be too concerned about the length of the work permit. In Canada, for various classes of permanent residency, for example, you're eligible to apply for PR status after 1 year of working in Canada. So that's something I would ask you guys to keep in mind if you are concerned about the length of the work permit. First of all, we can't do anything about that. That's up to Citizenship and Immigration Canada. Although, as Pam mentioned earlier, and I had posted something onto the chat so you guys can read a little bit more about this, but in British Columbia, there is a provincial nominee program, and the MBAN program is listed as eligible under this particular program. So I can say that the government has indicated obvious interest in students with STEM backgrounds, especially ones that study in Canada, because you have a really good chance of success from having a Canadian designation and obviously speaking English and having this type of engagement already. through a program like our MBAN program with the larger business community. So that's what I would say about the length of the work permit. We don't control that, but there's various routes to stay in Canada should you wish to do so. The government has indicated obvious interest with programs like the post-graduation work permit and the provincial nominee program, that they are interested in students with STEM backgrounds. Great. And then another related question to that was like, is my admission determined by my eligibility to work in Canada afterwards? He's no longer eligible for the post-graduation work permit. Absolutely not. We do not determine eligibility for this program by your eligibility to stay in Canada after the program. We are looking for students that will learn from this program and will be successful wherever they go after the program. So your immigration status has no bearing on whether you get into the program. But thanks for asking the question in case anybody was wondering that. Okay, so let's see here. There's a few more questions that came up. I'm gonna retrieve Pam from her break. Is a lot of these questions are for you. Among students who work for consulting firms, do we know the breakdown of Big Four, MBB, boutique consulting firms?
Yeah, I mean, I have the data. Most of them are landed at the Big Four consulting firms. There were a few smaller ones in Vancouver and on Vancouver Island, but I would say EY, Deloitte were the big ones that hired a number of our students, KPMG. And then I would say maybe a couple went to the big houses like McKinsey and Bain's and places like that. But the Big Four are typically the ones that our students, MBAN students go to.
And another question is probably top of a lot of people's minds is, the current job market seems slow due to the whole potential recession or recessionary pressures on the global economy. Was there a decrease in job postings in 2022 due to the recession? And is it expected for 2023?
Love that question. Okay, so I did go to, look up this data from the Canadian Economic Commission, and I did go to TD's website, which is Toronto Dominion Bank. They, do a financial forecast on the economy. And so what's interesting is that, our Canadian GDP is still up by 0.1%. So I am not an economist. I'm going to say that to you, but I do know a little bit about the economy. And what I'm saying about the 0.1% GDP is that is about 3% above pre-pandemic levels. So we're still in a good spot. We're still adding jobs to the Canadian economy, and our unemployment rate is holding steady at 5%. What's important to understand is, yes, big tech has, you've seen the layoffs from big tech, you've seen it from Twitter, you've seen it from Shopify and places like that. But don't let that deter you, because most of our jobs weren't in big tech. If you look at where our students went, they went into consulting, they went to all these different places, healthcare, and those are holding steady. Those are where our students are going. We have a strong labor market. Yesterday, the CPA, which is our accounting association in BC, they announced that, I've got a brain drain. They've got a shortage of newly qualified accountants, but also in the data set, they're really increasing their data warehousing. So that's where some of the jobs are going to explode. Retail, malls are, closing down, but retail is still holding strong. Lululemon, Arc'teryx, Aritzia, they're all doing well. That's where our students are going, to those kind of companies, and they're our Vancouver-based companies, and they're, internationally known. Something else, healthcare, like I said, is holding strong. Consulting was a big employer. And the data that I pulled for you and shared with you today, this is recent data. This is where our students who finished in November have just got these jobs. So I think that's, that you should take that as a really good indicator of the fact that we are still doing well here in Canada, and we're holding our own. Something that's, I learned yesterday also was power and utility is increasing all its data warehousing and storage. They're moving to, they're automating their asset management and inspection. And what that means is they're using drone technology. So they're needing more analytics people to be able to scrape that data, to pull it, to manage it. It's an exciting time to use AI. So I think that's important too. And then, I've been talking to companies this week who are going to be posting jobs for my students. And I think Vancouver is such a hub for technology. And these are companies that are doing like defibrillation for hearts that they're testing, and they're looking for lots of data interns, because this is an exciting time to be in that scientific space. So I'm very, obviously I can't predict the future when you come in, but it's the economy. All indicators are that we're still doing well. We have a strong force. We're still looking for labor. We still have a shortage in the service industry and other places. So you have to put in the work to be able to get those jobs, but our students are landing those jobs and internships. I'm
Great.
sorry if that was a long-winded answer.
No, that was amazing, Pam. I think the Central Bank of Canada would be happy with your overall economic assessment. In fact, like overall economically, like your macroeconomic assessment was great because like just recently the Bank of Canada announced the halting for the last interest rate announcement, they actually paused the interest rate adjustments. So it means that the economy, like things like global inflation, it's already starting to wind down a little in Canada to the point that they can actually pause some of these interest rate decisions. So it's looking good. And like Pam was saying, like I think a lot of us are quite nervous about like the cutbacks in big tech. Those are the things that make the headlines and it makes everyone really scared. But like our grads are getting jobs everywhere. And like when there's uncertainty, there's going to be like demand for people that can make sense of the uncertainty. And so these skills that you get in the MBAN program are always going to be universally in demand.
Yeah, so. And I would say, you have to be open-minded. You have to be open-minded to the opportunities that my team and the employer relations teams posts on Cool. You'll look at some of those jobs. You may not have heard of Kixeye or Fastloop. These are our small to medium tech firms that are doing so well in Vancouver. But people go, oh, I want to work for Google, or I want to work. You get the Canadian experience here. You get the promotions. You get the bigger lens to move around the company. Get that under your belt, and then see where you go in a year from now, right? Like. That's what you're really looking for. So you need that open-mindedness, and you need to make space and time to go, I need to, apply for jobs and connect with alumni and do coffee chats.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Pam. That was great. We have a good question here. I would like to ask it to you. What are the, kind of generally speaking, what are the most sought after skills required by firms? And then kind of like more specifically, since when we start applying for some internships before starting the course, what can we highlight in our resume? So kind of a more general question, what are the most sought after skills required by firms? And then more specifically, what should we highlight?
Yeah, so I would say soft skills that people are looking for are being able to storytell, because you are the analytics students, right? You are the people that are talking to maybe the data scientists. Maybe you're going to be pulling some of that data, but being able to storytell that to stakeholders across the company, and with the courses that you're learning, maybe it's decision making, or maybe it's predictive analytics, right? Like telling, what happened here, and predicting like I predict this will happen. So being clear in your storytelling is very important. That's one of the biggest skills. Communication skills, the ability to work in teams, being a contributor to a team. It's not all about I, me. It's about we, right? So I say that to our students a lot. And then, behavioral mock interviews, like being able to sell yourself in the interview, the value that you bring to the company. So I always talk about your resume and your cover letter. That is really important to get your foot in the door. Really important. So you've got to spend some good quality time. You can't have an automated thing that you send out to everybody, because, it's Vancouver's small, and first of all, they know, some of these HR people go from place to place, but also you want to customize it. But the storytelling is important. The teamwork is important. EQ, which is something we cover, emotional intelligence. We actually have a class on that. We do an assessment with you, and it looks at 10 competencies for things like self-confidence, or, being optimistic, and, straightforwardness, right? So understanding all how those kind of things work, because I talk about 3 things: can, want, and fit. That's what employers look for. Can you do the job? Do you want the job? But the last hurdle, and this is the hurdle that sometimes people fall in, is, are you a fit for the team? Can they see you in their company, getting on with people, and, wanting to learn and grow? And those are the skills that are very important, because people hire for attitude. They can teach you the skills, right? So you're getting the skills in the program, but attitude is something they cannot teach you. And I can't emphasize that enough. So those are the soft skills that we're looking for in at least the Canadian environment.
That's great. Thank you so much, Pam. Let's see here. There was an interesting question here. If someone already has Big Four consulting experience and are interested to pursue summer internship with Big Four, how can they leverage the Sauder MBAN for the same? So that's quite interesting because we do have some candidates come to us with Big Four experience already. So what's the value added, or what can we help them with the MBAN program?
So we do, like I said, we do have a big, can I just clarify the question? Are they saying that they come from Big Four and they want to stay in Big Four? Is that what I'm clarifying?
So the question, let me take a look here again. If anybody has the Big Four consulting experience and are interested to pursue an internship with Big Four consulting, how can they leverage the Sauder MBAN to continue on in Big Four, it sounds like?
Yeah, so we do have a huge alumni network, and we do have like all the students that the types of students I listed that went to Big Four. We highly encourage you to have coffee chats. We bring in alumni into your classes. We try to do them industry specific. So if you're interested in consulting, we'll bring those people in. Obviously, our employers come back to us over and over again because they know our program. They're looking for more of the same. They want to see those kind of students. But your alumni network is like gold. You want to connect with them. You want to work with them because they do, they're happy to refer you. But you have to do it in a way that is, you're wanting to be, it's their reputation on the line. So you have to come across, but with high EQ, you have to show that you're caring. It's like, you don't want to just meet with them and say, I need a job, right? It's about getting to know their career trajectory. It's about an informational interview. How did you get to here, even though you had Deloitte experience in China or in India? How did you get to Deloitte here? Or how did you get to KPMG here? You want to hear their story. And that's where most of your learning will happen. And it does happen, right? They leverage what they've learned in the past. And yes, sometimes they go to maybe the same company, but often I haven't seen that happen. I don't see them go from Deloitte to Deloitte. Sometimes I see Deloitte to EY. They're trying something new, right? So that's also important. You're all here to try something new. But leverage your alumni network. That's all I'll say to you.
Awesome, thank you, Pam. There's a good question here that says, how are the career outcomes for new grad students without full-time work experience? And what are the major differences between the outcomes for experienced students and students that came to the MBAN program without work experience?
That's a great question. So the students that lack work experience, this is why this internship is so important to you. You need this internship, and you want to take, even if it's with a smaller company, you want to get that under your belt because this is your chance to prove it. And so we did have quite a few students last year who didn't have much work experience. But what they showed the employers was that they were hungry and enthusiastic, and they were willing to learn and be molded into what the company was looking for. So they, it wasn't that they landed sooner, but they were willing to take opportunities that, some maybe more seasoned people was holding out for some of the bigger internships. So I haven't seen that if you have very little experience, it's more about how you come across. We do prefer, having some kind of internship experience or like working in teams or group work, because you got to have something to leverage on in your interviews when you're with the employer, right? So if you've done that extracurricular stuff, if you've led, done volunteer work and you've led teams there, use that to your advantage to showcase, because that's what it's about. It's that fit. It's about leading. It's about working in teams. It's about overcoming conflict, right? So that's what you need to leverage. But also your undergrad matters. Are you coming from comp sci? Are you coming from psychology and going into HR? So that matters too, as I said earlier.
That's great. Thanks so much for that answer, Pam. Another question is, are there any campus fairs and networking events that can help us put a foot in the job market, and in which period do students get a chance to interact with companies?
Yeah, so as I said, you're going to hit the ground running in September, right? I expect to see you at the company information sessions. We have lots, and I'm not talking just about a few. I'm maybe, I don't know, maybe 90, maybe 100. I don't know the exact number offhand, just in the month of September. And then, of course, we got the Big Four consulting. And then that's just that Sauder. I just want you to be aware of that. Then we have the big campus fairs that happen on campus for UBC. So we have something called Central Services, where they do some big job like fairs or networking events. as part of your program, which you might be interested in learning, and I didn't showcase this enough, is my team and I do an alumni mixer for you in October. So you're going to be expected to attend. Food and drink is provided. It's usually in a hotel downtown. And the alumni love this event. They all come and they want to visit with you, and they get to meet you, and they're making connections. So I try to bring in people from all industries so you can talk to them about, face to face and learn from them. Soon after that, in either November or January, we do an employer event. So this is where I'm bringing employers in specifically to come and talk to you. It's a networking event with employers who are looking to hire for internships very soon. So either they're going to be posting very soon or they've just posted jobs. So again, that's another connection. So we do a lot. We put a fair amount of money behind these events for you because the employer event is going to be in person too. Then we do a virtual employer event. So you get a lot of touch points that we at the Career Center put on for you. And UBC puts on for you, but also, it's on you. Like you saw 17% of the people got some of their jobs from LinkedIn, right? So it's getting, updating your LinkedIn profile. That is something that you can be doing over the summer before you hit the ground running here. Work on your LinkedIn profile. Look at the page that we'll be putting you on once you're admitted into the program, to say how to update that. We'll be putting on workshops. So take the time over the summer to get yourself what I call, career ready.
Thanks, Pam. There's a few more questions I find quite interesting. How can I explore opportunities in medium-sized firms and startups, which are not often found on LinkedIn? Are there any job search websites in Canada can be helpful?
Yeah, great question. And Vancouver's full of startups. That's what we're known for. We're a startup hub. So we have small to medium enterprises everywhere. So you will see most of these companies, Kickstarter was a startup, Fast Loop was a startup that you saw those listed. Those are all on our cool postings. So the careers online job board postings, as I say, we call it cool lovingly. But yeah, that's where you would find most of them. Those don't really show up on LinkedIn, but they show up on our job boards because our employer relations team are like hot on that to do that. But two other things to understand, we have Hatch and we have E at UBC. These are huge organizations at UBC that are helping, accelerator firms, and people who are sort of scaling up. And so they do a lot of tech work. And so you can become part of those clubs and learn more about those there.
Awesome. And I guess just to round things out, like this is an interesting question is someone's coming from a non-technical background, but obviously you get into the program, we would have seen like strong quantitative background already. So as someone coming from a non-technical background, does the program help build these skills from the fundamental level? So any advice on that, Pam?
So if we're talking technical as in Python, R and SQL, if you're accepted into the program, our goal is that you are going to bring yourself up to speed over the summer with some kind of tech skills, like either Udemy courses, Coursera, there's loads of free online courses, or do some of our data camps that we offer. Those are hugely important because when we start in September, we hit the ground running. We're not going to start from scratch for you, which is why when you look at the recruitment and admissions, we ask you, what kind of tech skills do you have? But we don't expect you to be computer scientists, right, coming into this program. I think that's really important to understand. But we do want you to get ready with some of these intermediate level classes. And, the earlier you apply, the earlier you're admitted, then you have a whole summer to do some of these courses. And that is my expectation of you. Otherwise, you will get left behind. And we don't want that for you, right? Because you don't want to be learning the material and trying to apply it all, all at the same time. You want to have some kind of basic knowledge coming in. And we do have people who don't have technical skills, right? But they have spent the summer learning these technical skills, committing to this program before they come in, So I would say it's not doable, but you have to put in the time and effort over the summer to do that.
Thank you, Pam. Great advice. And then we're at our hour time. So thank you so much for being here and for taking the time to show this amazing data and all the work that your team puts into ensuring this level of success for MBAN students. It's your work that gives me the pleasure of telling students about this program and what they can achieve out of doing it. So thank you for your work. I guess I would like to leave with just like, do you have, if for people that are considering doing an MBAN program at UBC Sauder, what's the biggest piece of advice you'd give them if they're on the kind of decision-making process?
I think for me, you really have to evaluate if this program is for you. Are you ready to commit to 1 year of, this is going to be fast-paced and, it's a lot of work. But I would also say the community that you build in this program is like no other. You are in this together. This is what makes our program stand out against other. If you want a community behind you of the Career Center, the programming team is amazing. Your team, as you stay with us and you come and watch their presentations and their hackathons. But the community that you build is a lifelong community. So if you're looking for a change, or if you're beginning your career and you look for a job of the future and you don't want to become a data scientist, but this is definitely a place that you can grow and learn and shift, but you have to be able to put in the work. So I would say, if you're thinking about it, come and ask me questions, come and ask Vivian, but do it soon, right? The scholarship's available. We want a diverse class in place. We want people to learn from each other, which is why we have people who are so seasoned and new people, because we're looking for people to mentor each other. It's a huge learning curve that you're going through, but you're doing it together. And these people will be your support network. And that's what I hear from our alumni back then, is that there were times in the class, you said that marriage and divorce thing at the very beginning, bringing it full circle, that they go, why did I do this? And at the end they go, I'm so glad I did this. So if you're even on the fence, before you make that decision to walk away, talk to Vivian and her team, reach out to us, reach out to alumni, and get your questions answered, right? What's the harm in this right now, right? It's something that's exciting, and it's a great time to be a part of.
That's great. Thank you so much, Pam. So Pam, I'm going to let you go. I'll stay back just a little longer to see if there's any admission related questions, just because we do have that deadline coming up on March 14th. But everyone, please give a big virtual round of applause for Pam. Thank you so much for the work.
Thank you very much, everybody. Bye.
And thank you. Great. So I'll just be around for just a few minutes longer. I can see a few questions here in the chat that I can help answer. So I will just stay here a little longer. If there's further questions about admissions, about that upcoming deadline on March 14th for international students, or third round for domestics, you can feel free to pop them on the Q&A, and I can stay for just a little while longer just to help address some of those questions. Now, I do see, does Sauder provide data camps or courses to learn technical skills over the summer? Yes, absolutely. That was a bit of what Pam was talking about. So there are a series of different courses structured into like a boot camp that you would take. If you got an offer of admission, we would send you all these materials. It is free of charge. So you can definitely engage in those. We actually recommend everyone, even if you do come from a technical background, to do all the course programming, the pre-program prep, we call it, before entering the program. Just like as Pam said, to get yourself up to kind of the intermediate level at minimum, before starting the program course programming. How soon do we hear back after the submission of the application? So that's a good question. So basically, once you submit a fully complete application, it takes about a month, like 3 to 4 weeks, for us to do the initial evaluation, the document verifications, and all that kind of pre-assessment. And then you would know whether you got an interview. And then once you do the interview, it's another 1 to 2 weeks to know whether you got into the program. So overall, it's about a 6 to 8 week process from the time that you submit a fully complete application to knowing the result. Now, I would say, like, with this deadline coming, I'm like, we're just a few days away. Like, if you are about to, complete your application, please, if you can, like, try to submit, like, even a day or two before that deadline, it makes a big difference, because a lot of people submit like at the deadline. So then there's like hundreds of applications coming in at the deadline, and like, we do admit on a rolling basis. So like applications as they come in complete are queued according to their time of submission. So even if you're a couple of days ahead, it'll put you ahead of like hundreds of other applications. So I would say if there's one piece of advice, that would be like, if you can even do it like a day or two before the deadline, it will make a big difference already. So SCMP is our kind of consulting boot camp, and it's an interesting program. Pam didn't have enough time to get into a lot of detail about it, but I can tell you more, and I can share the website for you. Or Anina, maybe you could share the website onto the chat for all of our participants. But SCMP is basically like a consulting mentorship program that that is run by our alumni that work in management consulting. And what happens is that our alumni in the consulting sector will fly in on kind of 4 weekends, and they use 4-weekend boot camp. And if you can pass all the consulting, pass the SCMP boot camp, you're basically guaranteed first round interviews with all the consulting firms. So that is McKinsey, Bain, BCG, as well as the Big Four. So that's really significant because that automatically puts you at the top 25% of the applicant pool. So that is very significant, and kind of like, especially with like top tier consulting getting in on with those big name companies. And they have their own kind of information sessions, as well as their website. I'm just gonna check here, website. Okay, cool. So that's great. So Anina's put the website on the webinar chat. So that's there for you guys to take a look at. There's a question a little bit about Vancouver. So like, how's the social life in Vancouver? I heard downtown is the main place for that. I would say it's actually like several centers with like different types of flavors in Vancouver. So there's like, Vancouver has like really lively neighborhoods. So like downtown is the center for a lot of events and like nightclubs and things like that. So it is a good place to consider living if you're coming to Vancouver. But also like Kitsilano, which is right next to UBC campus, is also a lovely area. Like it's got, lots of yoga, lots of cafes, and it's right by all the beaches. So it's got like a really lively kind of beach scene in the summer. And then also like lots of outdoor activities like kayaking and stand-up paddleboarding. So like, because it's close to the ocean, it's got that ocean flavor. And then like the neighborhood I live in is like it's called Commercial Drive, and that's a Little Italy area. So that's like got, again, a lot of different cafes and like different types of festivals and different type of artist activities that happen. So I think the neighborhoods are all very, very different, and you can get whatever you're looking for out of anyone that's like of those ones that I mentioned, are one of many. So it depends on what you're interested in. North Vancouver, where you see like, with that first photo I showed you, you see all the mountains. That's a fantastic area if you're really into the outdoors, because there's tons of hiking, and like in the winter there's skiing, both in the resorts, because there's like 3 mountains within 30 minutes of Vancouver city center. And then of course Whistler, the big mountain where we had the Olympics, is only about like another hour drive away. So yeah, lots of activities. Really depends on what you're looking for. If you're more outdoorsy, you might want to consider like North Vancouver. If you are like North Vancouver, Kitsilano, if you want to also be close to the campus, or like downtown if you like the nightclubs and nightlife, or like cafe culture, Little Italy could be a good option. So lots of different areas in Vancouver that you might consider living. Oh, and one thing I would mention, for those of you that aren't familiar, like Vancouver doesn't have snow. So it's actually the warmest climate in all of Canada. So if any of you guys are worried that you're going to come and it's just full of ice and snow, don't worry, we actually don't get that, except for on the mountains where the snow belongs. So if you want to see ice and snow, you can get it. You just drive up to the mountain and then you can go skiing. You see those amazing, beautiful views, but we don't get snow very much in the city, so it's not something that you're gonna have to adjust to too much if you're from a warm climate. Just so you know, we have 4 seasons. So in the winter, the worst temperature we get is kind of like maybe 0 to 5. So sometimes it gets to freezing, but kind of like 5 to 10 degrees is the norm. So it's cold for a lot of you guys, like from India, for example, that'd be quite cold, but honestly, not that much colder from like Northern India, for example. So it's not too cold here. The worst weather we get is typically rain. The summers is very temperate, so it's very comfortable, but not too hot. Like something between like 25 to 30 degrees is like our max temperature in the summers. And then spring and fall, like anywhere from 10 to 20 degrees, depending on your proximity to summertime. So just a little bit about the climate and weather in Vancouver. Okay, we can't tell you how many applications the MBAN program gets per year, but I can tell you we do have multiple times more applications than we have seats in the class. But I'll say, like, we don't just fill seats for the sake of filling seats. You have to be like a good fit for the program, and there's a lot of determinations of what we're looking for and how you fit in before we let you into the program. So we don't always fill to capacity every year. So like at the end of every year, despite having hundreds of applications more than we have spots, like we won't just fill the seats for the sake of filling seats. We'll leave those seats empty. So that's meaning to say that even if you apply in the last rounds, there could be a spot for you, just so long as you're the right fit for the program. And we've determined that this is a good investment of your time and money, and that you can achieve success. So that's what I would say about that. Okay, so I don't see too many questions that I can answer. Now, like Pam is on LinkedIn, she is very busy, so I'm glad you guys were able to come for this event. But you can always see if you can catch her on LinkedIn if you have like kind of direct follow-up questions from this webinar. And of course, you would have full access to her team and Pam herself if you do join the program and start with us in August 2023. So I don't see too many other questions that I can help answer at this point. Just note that I do run, if you do have further questions, I do run weekly kind of drop and ask me anything sessions. So I'm just going to put our events page here. So look for our ask me anything sessions. Yeah, I see them all posted. The new ones are all posted. So that's great. I'm just going to put them on the web chat actually so everyone can see it. So check out our further events. All of our like Ask Me Anything sessions that I try to run weekly, that are kind of drop-ins. So you drop in, ask your question, and then maybe learn from some questions from other people. Those are all on this webpage that I just put on the webinar chat. And then we also have our upcoming event, which is the How to Upskill with Analytics panel discussion that's coming up in April. So look for those events, join us another time. And then if there's further questions, you can always reach me directly via email. There you go. Great. So thank you everyone for coming to this event and to learn more about the MBAN program. I hope you found it informative, and thanks again for your interest in the UBC MBAN, and I look forward to connecting again soon at a future event or chat. Thank you.